Welcome, welcome back to Speak Pact. We are thrilled that you are here with us today, and we are going to dive into the world of networking as a tool for positioning yourself and attracting those high value engagements. And I have the premier expert on networking. She's brought herself quite a distance with her strategies, Diane Darling. Welcome to the stage.
It is my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm super excited that you've given of your time today to speak to the Speak Pact audience. And just a bit about you. You provide customized programs, which I always love customization. That's amazing. Um, because networking and communicating is a very personal thing, right? For you, it's going to be different for me, and we're all positioning ourselves in a bit different way. So the way that we network and the way that we communicate has everything to do with that. You yourself are a professional speaker. You've got a massive following on LinkedIn and beyond. You're a published author through McGraw Hill. You love to travel. If you're a speaker, I hope you I hope you love to travel. That's a really good mix. Um, and you really are passionate about connecting people. So how just give us the beginnings. What made this your area of professional focus?
So, one thing I share with speakers is in some cases, let your audience pick you versus you picking your audience. I had no idea I was ever going to speak about networking. Somebody asked me, would I do a talk about networking? I'm like, why would I do that? And they said, you're good at it. And I'm like, okay. I just really didn't think of it as a unique skill to me. I was raised as a kid on the road. We moved. It's been a joke ever since I was born. Basically, I don't know where I'm from. I was born outside of Washington, D.C. We lived in Virginia, but the hospital was in Maryland. When I was 6 months old, we were crossing the border, and the border guard said, "What a cute little baby. Where was she born?" And my dad says Virginia, and my mother says Maryland. And he said, "You're not taking this child out of the country until the parents know where this kid's from." Um, and I thank that border guard every day. But no, I mean, in all seriousness. And then we moved to the Philippines when I was 6, moved back to the States when I was 7, moved to Indiana when I was 8. I just had to learn how to talk to people. And so I didn't think of it as anything too unique until other people said, I don't know how to do that. And probably some of the most frequently asked questions I get is how to get into a conversation. And the following question I get asked is, how do I get out of a conversation? So, I'm teaching this week at MIT. And what I share with those students is what you know innately is not something that I could probably learn. You are a gifted soul with knowledge and insights and math and, the mind to take on something that, you know, I will never be. Yesterday was the Boston Marathon. I will never be a runner. I just don't have the body for it. Where there's a lot of people who just naturally were given the gift of, lean legs and a way to make that succeed. But what I tell people is you can learn what I teach. And so if you have the blend of the technical skills and then the people skills or the soft skills, depending on which phrase you like or dislike, that is a great way for you to know how to succeed.
So much power in what you just shared. And really, when it comes to, let's boil it down to just speaking, becoming a rising expert in your your genre, your space. It's all about connecting with organizers, connecting with your audience, and building relationships. If you can't hold a conversation that has a clear beginning, a clear middle, and a clear end, and you're just kind of all over the place, how can people really buy into you? So, how have your skills with networking and building relationships based on good communication affected your speaking career?
Oh, it's been terrific because in many cases I get most of my leads from people who've already seen me speak. And so that's one of the best ways, all of you in the audience today, that you're some of the best people who say, "Wait a minute, I want you in my company." Most of the work I do is going into companies and organizations and helping people figure out how to network internally, How do they know if you're in a law firm and you're a young attorney? How do you connect to the person who's giving out the deal flow? If you're a scientist, how do you get to be, on the team of people who are doing experiments? If you're a young doctor, how can you be in the room when the surgery is taking place? A lot of that is based on relationships. Yes, there's going to be a punch list if we need to have people who have this success, this skill, this skill, this skill. But if you have that skill and you're not somebody who knows how to communicate, it can be really problematic.
I think of just kind of in a very literal sense. So there's a lot more to it, but just in what you were saying, I envisioned a person on a stage speaking who is just kind of dumping information, endless information. It might be really great information, but it's just dumping information versus that networking kind of interactive spirit where it's go give and you know where to start, you know just enough of the middle and you know when to end, right? When we pour that whole pot of pasta on the heads of the audiences, what does that leave? And we all have a grandmother, most of us, hopefully, hopefully, because it's a highlight of living, who love to feed you. And you're like, Grandma, I love it. It's my favorite dish, but that's enough. That's enough. Right? That's the last place that you want to leave an audience. You want to give them just enough that they can take it in, digest it. It could be nourishing, and then they need that next bowl of nourishment for you. That's that open loop that we want to create in communicating and connecting. And I just really see, even on a literal sense, the usage of these strategies that you've put together.
You're exactly right. I asked somebody for feedback one time, and she was a speaking coach, and I said, "Is it fair for me to ask you for feedback?" I mean, we were both at an event, and I said, "I know this is what you do for a living. I want to be respectful." And she goes, "No, I'd love to give you some feedback, Diane. Just think of it as my gift to you tonight." I said, "Okay." And at the end of the talk, she said, "You can't possibly tell everybody what you know. You can't tell them everything you know. You just can't do it. It's just not humanly possible. You've got to share less." And I thought that was such an interesting piece of feedback to get as a kind of a puppy speaker when I was beginning to start out with, because I remember I would wake up in the middle of the night and think, "Oh my gosh, I need to give them all a refund. I forgot these two things."
Oh my
you
goodness.
know, and I felt like I needed to tell everybody everything. And she said, "No, just tell them a little bit because that's all they can process at the moment. They can't process everything that you know. They just can't do it." So I think a big mistake that speakers make is they do try and share too much. I'm not a believer in, you and I have seen the people who sell from the stage, and here's this one little tip, and if you buy my program for, $5.99, $999 or 1,000 rounded up or whatever else it is, you'll find out what's really going to save your life. Not. But I don't. This is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when you are ideally a paid speaker, you get what's called your happy price, and you want to deliver a quality content. That still doesn't mean you tell them everything, because again, you want to tell them what they need to know for that moment and what you promised them you're going to tell them.
So much gold there. Yes, absolutely. I'm so on board. I have a quote. It's not about the information, it's about the transformation, not about the implementation. Right? So it's if you're getting on stage and you're talking for 60 minutes, maybe even 90 minutes, your best hope is to give them one tangible micro transformation that they came in, they leave a different person than when they came in. Oh my goodness, Diane Darling opened my eyes to this one thing that changed so much for me. Right? And you're not going to be able to give them, unless you get a series later or you get to do a deep dive later, not really going to be able to show the implementation part because that's going to be the dump, right? That's just going to leave them stuffed too much.
That's where the coaching comes in, and a number of speakers are coaches. I do a little bit of it. I candidly am not sure that everybody understands or is coachable. So I don't do a lot of it. I do a little bit of it, but somebody has to kind of basically, we go through some, we go through a dating process before we decide we're going to be a coach and a protege. But I do think that part of it is leaving them with to your point, enough information that they can say, I can implement that.
Yeah.
So when I do things in person, we do what I call handshake therapy. And so we shake each other's hands and then we give each other feedback on handshakes. And I say, when was the last time anybody ever gave you feedback? And most people have never received any feedback on their handshake. And then we go off and do a bunch of handshakes. And I said, will you please give people the gift? And people are like, wow, I didn't know it was too weak, too strong, too weird. I have a cold drink right here for some iced tea. I say, if you have a wet handshake, hold a cold drink in your right hand and then you can blame the hand. I'm so sorry that drink was all wet. you know, we do an exercise when we do it virtually, or it can be in person. I'm dyslexic. So I have what I call a dyslexic introduction. I rarely say, hi, I'm Diane Darling. I say, I'm your speaker today with a pause. My name is Diane with a pause, Darling. If I don't put the pause in there, I get Darlene. I don't get Diane. And I know they want to say my name correctly, the same way you were gracious enough before we went on air for you to tell me the pronunciation of your name. Because if I'm skimming it real fast, I might call you Antoinette, but it's not that. And so you were gracious enough to say, here's how I pronounce my name, which is, I'm going to get it wrong now. Ant- Antoniette.
And Tony, yeah, you got it. You got it.
Um, but part of it is that if I say I'm Diane Darling, I'll always get Darlene. If I give them the context, I'm your speaker, or I'm the person across the hall with the cat, or I'm the sister of the bride, or I give people some context to how you fit into an event. And then I'm the spouse of the VP or marketing or whatever it might be. Give yourself that package and then say your name afterwards. People are more likely to, one, remember your name, and two, they are more likely to remember the context because of the name, because you've given them that bridge.
Ah, so much goodness. And it's that go give. You go back to the go give, right? Yes, you're the authority, you're the one that's bringing the information, but you're doing it in a way that is illustrative and interactive and uniquely you. Um, but we remember better that way in those kinds of strategies. Now we're in a world where some speaking engagements are on location, which is great. Some are virtual. How do you feel about communication and connection and networking through a screen?
It's absolutely possible. Is it the same? No, but it is absolutely possible. When the pandemic first happened, people were like, "Oh, we can't network anymore." I'm like heck, you can't. Back in the old days, we used to have pen pals. You had relationships with these people. So, there's two people who do some work for me. One I've met and the other one I haven't, and I hope to meet him soon, although he's in the UK. And so part of it is, how can we really make these connections? We care. We spend time with them. We get to know them. I I will say for myself, I right now have a vacuum of people who are local to me here in Boston. That is, I just don't have enough people for whom I can say it's a beautiful day. Do you want to grab a walk? Of people who are, within maybe a mile or two proximity of me. I've got lots of connections all around the world, people who I do believe care about me tremendously, but I don't necessarily have that. So, one person said, well, maybe you need to do this, this, and this, and this, and that. Those are some things that I can do. Part of it is just not taking the time, part of it is inertia. But I do think that you can accomplish a lot virtually. And I do think that that is why, Meetup. I mean, just look at the online dating sites. The whole point is to meet somebody local, or at least if you're, or at least in a city that you're interested in living in if you want to move. I know one person, he had two profiles, one in Boston and one in Atlanta, because he was looking to move into Atlanta. And, he found himself dating in both because he just knew that was, he would find some proximity there. Um, I'm not necessarily advocating for that, mind you, but anyhow, I want to be clear
Side
on that.
note.
Side note, side note, side note. But yeah, now I'm back in the market. It's just never a fun thing. But anyhow, I digress. But part of it is, I think in some cases, it is, being willing to, maybe think a little bit differently, act a little bit differently, be a little bit braver. Sometimes those things are just tricky.
You're so right. And this is live. We're in person. We're connecting. We're building a relationship. And this isn't obviously the first time you and I have met. Um, some of my closest relationships, I know this is going to sound just terrible, but some of the closest relationships that I have in my life outside of my nucleus family, and some of my, nucleus friends that I've had for years, I have not actually met them in on location. I don't even wanna say in person because I feel like this is in person, this is live, but my producer, my executive assistant, we're very close. We've been together for years. We haven't actually been able to exchange a hug, right? Some of the speakers that I work with, we've been together for years, and, many of them I've gotten to meet, some of them I haven't, just hasn't worked out. But these are big figures in my life, and, are just as important. And I think that when you are putting across ideas and information, if you're really focused on the transformation of that person or the people within that group that you're speaking with, there's no veil. It's still what you bring to the table and how you connect and draw out of them what they may be holding tightly to their chest.
Yeah. I mean, last week I was having a really, really rough day. And I think all of the people who I communicated about it with were distant people. And they were all just, I wish you were closer so we could get a hug. And, again, I don't really have that inner circle where I am right now, um, which is rough because I think when you are having a downtime, as much as you like the support of people virtually, there is nothing like somebody who just says, let me take you out for a coffee and a cry
Or a strong glass of wine.
or a strong glass of wine. Yes, I don't drink a lot, but I'll have a glass of wine every so often when it sometimes is, it's just the magic of the moment.
Yeah.
And it's really not the wine, it's the companionship.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, I love that. So, what are some of the more n- not as obvious ways to really start building relationships and rapport and connections virtually?
The best way to do it virtually or in person is to do something for the other person.
Serving.
you
Mhm.
know here's an article you might find useful, here's an introduction you might find useful, here's an organization you're going to find helpful, here is a restaurant you're going to like based on our last conversation about spicy whatever else it might be. So I think the more you can be, and it doesn't need to be a big thing. It really does not need to be a big thing. Um, I've sadly, a childhood friend recently passed away. And, it's been on my mind, and I'm going to do it after this call because I haven't done it, is to check in on him, to check in on his brother. His brother is his brother's already lost one brother, and now he's lost his last brother.
Ah,
And so and he's my age, and so and he lost his first brother very young when the little boy was only 15. And so he to lose a sibling at that age and then to lose another one, and the one that's left is the oldest. So he's feeling, I'm sure, like, wait a minute, it's this is just not how chronologically it's supposed to happen.
yeah.
So you know, check in on people. I mean, I'm not a big birthday person, but I'm in the I have a digital birthday and I have my real birthday, and my digital one is a few days off. It's my grandmother's. And so my digital one was last week and my real one's coming up on this week. And so I'm in kind of my birthday week, and it's just been nice for people to reach out and say, happy birthday. I'm doing it a bit more on the birthdays with LinkedIn myself because it has it there as well. You can wish people a happy birthday. but I try and look out for working anniversaries. I do try and look out for promotions, new jobs, things like that, and I often will not do it the first. If I can't be one of the first people to congratulate people on a new job or a promotion or something along those lines, I tend to wait a day or two because then they're inundated the first day with all these sorts of things and your congratulations get lost. I'm fine with being it a few days later because then I can get a little bit more attention. I can say, it's been fun to see everybody congratulating you. Certainly wanted to be a part of that party. Sorry, I'm a little bit late to the celebration, or something along those lines. Um, so try and do it so you're not lost in the crowd, but try and do it where you actually do have a chance to do that. One thing I share with people with LinkedIn, I've never done drugs in any meaningful way. I lived in Thailand when I was in high school, and even then I didn't do drugs very much. But what I will say is that I do find LinkedIn can be a little bit addictive. And we feel like once we start, it keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going. Turn on a timer, do it for 20 minutes solid. Try and tune out everything else. Turn your email off or just say for right now until the phone, goes off. I'm going to do 20 minutes of LinkedIn. Do connections, do shout outs, do send links, do send stories, do share posts, comment on them. And don't comment with that just saying nice post, good idea. Say this was a good idea because da 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 da. And the more you do that, this is how I reached. I now have 22,000 followers on LinkedIn. This is how I got my numbers up. I'm not the highest in the world. I'm not Bill Gates.
It's not
I'm not,
peanuts. It's
but
it's
it's not peanuts, you know. And it's and a lot of them are bots. At one point the number was much higher, and then LinkedIn went in, and I'm like, why did I all of a sudden I lose a couple thousand, followers? And LinkedIn sent a note and saying, we're getting rid of your bot followers.
mm,
Fine, I don't want bot
yeah.
followers.
No, that's so key, Diane. That LinkedIn is such an incredibly powerful tool. And yes, it can really kind of suck you in. So I love that kind of Pomodoro technique that you said. Set a timer, get your stuff done. It's important. It's important enough to be on your calendar really every day or at least multiple times per week. One thing I have seen about LinkedIn is it's all about what you're about networking and building connections, building relationships, not just those surface level connections, but really they reward conversation. So you're exactly right. You definitely, if you do nothing else, like liking somebody's post, even sharing somebody's post does not hold as much weight for LinkedIn as interacting in the post. So you spot on. Don't just say great post. I think they
Right.
like 13 words or something. There's some number, magic number, but actually comment on other people's posts that built your following tremendously. That was one of the parts of your ecosystem. But what also does, which is really nice, is now everyone in their world that you may not be connected with, um, now they get to their your your comment is pushed to all of them. So this is really a powerful technique. I think with LinkedIn, like things like Facebook, Instagram, you kind of willy nilly make connections, right? All of, from from friends to an interest in dogs to your profession. Would recommend, and I really love your thoughts on this, Diane, especially with the networking aspect of it, is what I recommend to my speakers is keep it to your genre, keep it to your subject matter area, because LinkedIn is very, very particular about that. And what they're going to, if you're all over the place and they can't figure you out, they're not going to push you out, or they're going to push you out to the wrong spaces, right? This is a serious platform for serious performers in business. And so I keep LinkedIn pretty professional. Of course, there's some friends, my brother, right? There's some people in there, but for the most part, it's strictly professional relationships. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like LinkedIn is the grown up in the room. It's maybe the parent a little bit, if you will, or the aunt or uncle, the wise person in the room. I don't even have Facebook anymore. I lost my Facebook. I somebody scammed it away
Mm,
from me, and I only have so much energy left. I have an Instagram. I'm starting a TikTok. I have a pretty pale YouTube group, but I think LinkedIn is the place to be if you're serious about building relationships.
yeah,
And if that's what you really are wanting to do, then LinkedIn is the place to be. And I think it is also the place to be. I sat next to a pilot recently while I'm flying back, and he was deadheading home from some training, and he dated himself a little bit when he said, I miss the days when people used to dress up to fly." I'm like, "Yeah, that was a while back, sweetheart."
yoga pants all the way.
I hate to tell you, and I was sitting there in my yoga pants thinking, "Oh gosh, I hope he doesn't even notice what I look like when I get off the plane." And I've recently been on the mend from a broken ankle, and so I was wearing a
Mm,
boot on top of all of this, so I really looked disheveled. But I think if there's a way for people to kind of up level who they are on LinkedIn, I do also don't want anybody to ever feel like it's disingenuous or it's not authentic.
yeah,
Business is a little crazy right now. The world is crazy and it's upside down. My business is not bad, but it's not in great shape because people can't make up their mind. They don't want to spend money. They're hesitant. I'm a luxury spend, if you will. I'm not a I've got to have toilet paper type of a spend. So it's slow, and it's slower than I wish it was. And, it's hard for me to know how to show up on LinkedIn at this moment because I don't want to look like, oh, things are bad, but it's not great, And so it's been a little bit of a dance. I haven't yet necessarily done any significant posting about, how I'm feeling right now because I'm not sure that I want to read about other people struggling, but I
mhm,
also and when people say, well, you're not alone, everybody's struggling because of the economy and tariffs and people can't make up their mind. I'm like, that doesn't help me, I mean, and so
yeah,
I want to be very respectful of people's pain and some of the things that people are going through. And I think newbie speakers, I got an email from someone yesterday who wanted to know if he could talk to me about becoming a coach. Um, you know, Optics, he thought I was a good coach and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'm a good coach, but I'm not always the best salesperson. And so, if you don't love selling, then don't try coaching. Keep your day job.
yeah.
And
Change is always unsettling.
it's very
I think
unsettling,
if
yeah.
we trust ourselves and trust the process, that you look in back in history, even in the worst of times, people pulled through it if they just didn't give up, if they didn't panic, right? And so, yeah, there's some great things happening. There's some like I don't know how that's going to pan out, things happening, all the things, but there's really no era where there's not going to be some of that. We're just living this era. And what I say double down, right? So, not necessarily letting people know of your struggles if you feel led. And I always say, speak from your scars, not from your open wounds. Like I would caution speaking at a time where you're still working things out.
Right.
Um, but on the other hand, this is a great time to be even more active in making those comments in your
Yeah.
connections because that's really not revealing anything that you might be struggling through at the moment, but you're still moving forward and there's this momentum that happens that when you don't allow uncertainty or your ankle, whatever it is that you're going through to hold you back and you're still moving forward, I think the whole force of your body is still in forward motion even though there's some things you're working out.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. I like the going from scars versus the open wound. I think that that's a very good differentiator, to think about. And I think also, kind of one of the things I hear from a lot of speakers is they say, I've been through so much, I have so much to share. And I'm like, that's great. Find somebody who wants to hear it. you know, not, a lot of us have been through dark times, myself included. And other times I've been through some amazing experiences where life is just magical. And so I think it's important, though, to be sure that you are sharing and selling something that solves the audience's problem.
Yes.
Otherwise, I think it's important to find a therapist who wants to hear it,
Yes.
because they're two different audiences. And, I often, I'm never going to belittle somebody else's, struggle or pain or whatever it is that they want to share, or I can save somebody else so many other pain points, or I can help somebody else, making the same mistakes that I did. You know what? There's a kid born every moment who's going to make the same mistakes you did.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of life. So you have to be really, really good at finding the audience that matches your message. And the audience, whether you're paid or unpaid, that is the compensation you get, is their time, and they will never get back that time.
Mhm. Oh,
You
there's a
know,
lot of wisdom there, hard-earned wisdom, and it's really hard to feel down in the dumps or to even really focus on some of the things that you're wanting to clean up in your own life or heal up, when you're helping other people, when you're giving. It's very difficult to get yourself stuck in a rut when you're actually giving. Mhm.
So I'll share with you. Somebody gave me this phrase, and I still can picture him right now. It's called healthy selfishness.
Hmm.
You have healthy selfishness when you put on your own mask first on a plane. God forbid there's a problem, and we know there's plenty of problems these days. There was one just yesterday where they had to use the chutes to get people off the plane, in Atlanta. You
Oh, yeah,
know,
what's happening with that? But yeah, whole different
Well,
topic.
that's a whole different topic, but I think we need to be really healthy in our selfishness. Yesterday, for me to say to this person, "I don't have time to talk to you right now," was the hardest thing in the world for me to do about coaching. I really didn't have anything more to share with them. I wrote him an email back, and here's what I would tell you if we had time to talk. It was Marathon Monday here in Boston. I wanted to go for a walk. It was a beautiful day, and I had a lot of work I needed to do. I'm back to school, so I'm working on a degree,
Mm.
and so I just had a lot of homework to do, and I'm way behind in my work. And so part of it was I just needed to be willing to have that healthy selfishness.
Mhm. If you're gonna help anybody, you've gotta be strong enough to pull up, right? Otherwise, you're very easy to pull down,
So I
and
have
there's so
an
much wisdom in that. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I have an analogy of when you're hiking, you're going up a mountain, and the whole mountain is there. And that's what you're trying to solve at that moment, is going to a point in the mountain. But all that really matters is your next step. So you got to go hyper focused. And what is your next step? Where are you going to put your foot? You don't want to slip. You don't want to break your ankle. You don't want to, um, be ahead of others that you get lost, or way behind that you get lost. I mean, when you're hiking, you're obviously usually doing it with other people. It's not wise to do it by yourself for a lot of reasons. But you want to think about that. Don't try and take on the whole mountain. Take
That is
on
so
that
that's a
little bit.
key concept that you just shared. So, yeah, you map out your course, right? You map it out. But when we're looking at, "Oh my gosh, the summit is still 3 hours away. How the heck am I gonna get to that summit?" Um, you don't need to worry about that. You just worry about, "If I can make the next step, then I can make the next step." And I can so key.
Speaking of hiking, I just had this flash of a memory as I was hiking in Idaho with a friend, and we got to our spot, we started coming down, and neither of us were from Idaho, and it was starting to get dark much faster than we were expecting. And we started realizing we're going to be hiking in the dark.
Ooh.
And we made our way to a road, and I started hitchhiking. I put my thumb out. Scott, I think, was a little too embarrassed. I'd be curious to see if he even remembers this story. And it was a long time ago, because he's now married with kids in college, and so it was well before any of that sort of stuff. He had just met Mary. She was just, they're the loveliest couple. But part of it was, you got to hitch. I had a hitch. I was wise enough to look up from the mountain for a moment and say, wait a minute, I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I need help to get down.
Ah, see? See? And that's
Got
where coaching and consulting comes in. So perfect segue into me asking you, how do you like to be reached? How do you serve people and how do you like to be found?
So I like to be found on LinkedIn is one spot. My website is another spot. You can email me anytime, Diane, Diane, just one N, at DianeDarling.com is probably the best way. If you don't hear back from me, it means the email got lost in my inbox because I've got way too many messages. So just buzz me again. Please don't be shy. Please don't be shy. I tend to do most of my efforts are speaking and workshops. I definitely do some coaching and consulting and things around that line. But for the most part, if people hire me to do speaking and workshops.
Okay, fabulous, Diane. And so it's Diane No Tricks, Diane, Darling, great stage name, Darling. She's just follow her on LinkedIn. She's got some really great material that she puts out and super responsive through email or I guess, are you good with DMs
Yes,
as
I'm
well, as
very good
long as
at
they're
DMs.
legit and not, yeah, not
Yeah,
spam and
Facebook is not the place to find me at all, or Instagram, really. I'm just rarely on either of those. Rarely, like once a month on those.
yeah, I have automatic posting now to LinkedIn and Instagram, but I'm rarely there. I'm there just to see grandchildren pictures every now and then, but yeah, LinkedIn is I've really grown to love it, and probably like a lot of people, I I created a profile just because I guess I'm in business and I should, right? And it kind of sat there for years. I didn't really do anything with it, and then I realized the power behind it. Many speakers and many professionals, 30% or more of their gigs come directly from LinkedIn. And it's not trying to sell yourself, it's just making yourself visible. And that goes right back to your superpower, Diane, and that is networking. If talk about networking, if you're not networking on LinkedIn and some core industry related groups as well, then you're missing a really powerful way to connect with right fit people and start building the relationships in all the right places.
Yep. Yep. It's a great tool. I've been on there. My LinkedIn membership number is well, it's technically 16,416. The first 1,000 were just given numbers. So it was actually 15,000 and change. And, I mean, I've grown up in towns that are smaller than that. So, it's amazing to think about how what a small village it was. And now it's got a billion members.
Wow. Wowza. Well, you mentioned something that I want to come back to and then we'll start wrapping here. But you talked about serving, genuinely serving as a way to really build connections, stay top of mind and memorable, referable, and just really create meaning in networking. I think there's a lot of different ways that people go about networking, and to me, the ones you say that it's a waste of time, it's only a waste of time if you're doing it wrong. If you're handling it right, if it's what's in it for, what do I get, what do I get, networking isn't gonna work very well for you. But if it really is service oriented, there's a whole lot of power in it because people remember. I remember I interviewed Jen Beck not too long ago. She's a pretty well-known speaker, and she talked about this a little bit as well, echoing what you said, Diane. And essentially, she'll just send out little notes. Hey, I saw this article today. Thought you might enjoy it. She'll send that. She's not asking for anything, or she's great. She's connected me to some really great people. She'll say, "Hey, I met, let's say, Diane, and Antoniette, I really feel like you two should meet." And so she'll connect them. Really, really amazing ways to connect people. She's always telling a past organizer that, some speaking opportunities are one and done, right? So you have a speaking, she'll say, "Hey, in case you're looking for somebody for next year, I'd like for you to meet, ABC person." Talk about staying top of mind and building that law of reciprocity and really investing in a relationship. Huge. Another one is Ben Albert. Was trick that he gave that I thought was really great. And this is, I don't know, like a year ago episode, I think. But he'll take his phone and he'll open up his text, he'll scroll way down to the bottom of who he hasn't talked to in a bit, and he'll just send him a quick little note, hey, thinking about you today, hope all is well, right? Or just something super, super small. And we don't have to do it in our text. I don't necessarily text with my professional relationships, but the same thing can happen through DM, through, whatever way. So however you want to network, make it you, but definitely network. And that's one of the huge reasons, Diane. I know it's really become what you've gotten known for, and having you on the show and sharing some of those strategies that you've developed, and reinforcing the importance of networking and building relationships, nurturing those relationships cannot be understated.
Right.
So thank you for bringing your wisdom to us today. I know
My
you
pleasure.
you know my signature last question. So you've left us already with several strategies. But if there was just one that you could pull out, where somebody, you or I, or any listener listening today, could start really implementing and practicing, that will help strengthen their network, build those relationships, what is a core thing you would suggest that they do?
I would suggest that they network in their own closet.
What does that
That
mean?
so often, well, to me, it's like here's a new person. They're shiny and exciting. Here's a new person. They're shiny and
Wow.
exciting. Here's a new person. They're shiny and exciting. They are, but so are all of the people who you already have met in the past who you've not been in touch with. So I would say I would encourage people to maybe, set, I would do the LinkedIn 20 minutes twice a week. And I would do the hi, it's, we haven't been in touch in a while, twice a week for 20 minutes. And, and maybe create it as an email template. Hi, blank, my bad. We haven't been in touch. You know, um, I can give you a lame excuse or I can just tell you the truth. you know I dropped the ball. You came to mind today because blank happened. Wanted just to send a shout out. If you want to grab a call, that's fine. And just plant those seeds. When I was in college, we were planting marigolds, and there was a young lady across the hall from us, my roommate and I, Julie and I, and this other young lady. She didn't get around to planting her marigolds, and she was like, "I'm going to fail the class. I haven't planted my seeds." And so she finally planted the seeds. 2 days later, Julie and I are at the grocery store, and we see this little pot of marigolds. And so Julie has the crazy idea of sneaking into Susan's room in the middle of the night and swapping the plants because she had just planted her seeds. She comes out, "You guys, it's a miracle. It's a miracle." And we obviously couldn't hold our laughter. But we felt so bad and we laughed so hard. But you don't go in there every day and dig it to the seed and say, "Are you growing yet? Are you growing yet? Are you growing yet?" And so I go to the seeds where you've already planted it and give it some water and give it a
Mm.
little bit of sunshine, and maybe, you know, you have to repot it. I don't know. I'm not a plant person, so my analogies are failing me here. But, I think that the best thing that we can do is to go to the people who we already know and refresh that connection. I also think in some cases, if people have not been responsive, it's okay to let that person go. I don't disconnect with them on LinkedIn. I don't. I don't see any purpose for that at all. And I don't re-engage with them.
You don't wanna chase.
I don't feel like I don't need to chase them.
Yeah.
They've expressed that, they just simply want to be a connection, and that's fine. And that's good.
I love that you brought up the distinction between, first of all, I love network in your own closet. That is so powerful, right there. And there is a fine line between nurturing a relationship and chasing after a relationship,
Yeah.
and understanding the difference is pretty powerful as well. Every now and then, I'm really glad that somebody chases after me, because I really didn't mean to ignore them. It's just, they got lost in the mix somehow.
Oh, you have said it. You have said it. There's a woman one time, and this was an interesting lesson. She said, I said, nice to meet you at an event because we've actually met before, but you obviously don't remember me.
Oh,
And so I now, so here's another tip for your audience. I now say nice to see you. I never say nice to meet you. I
Meet
say nice to
you.
see you.
Ah,
But
good one.
she went into some story. I'm like, if you told this to your therapist, she remembered some of this story vividly about where we'd met and I had dissed her and all kinds of stuff. And I felt horrible. I sincerely felt horrible. And I actually, if you put a gun to my head, I would have no recollection of this moment. But she was very hurt, and it bothered me that I had hurt somebody.
Mm,
And so I had to really think, and I realized what had happened was that people perceive me as an extrovert. They perceive me as somebody who likes to be around people, who can chat, and I can hold my own on that. But boy, I'm tired at the end of it, and I'm really, really get, I can get really worn out. And when I'm worn out, I'm just a dead bug. I'm just barely useful for to flip me on. I'm just upside down with my legs in the air for all practical purposes. Somebody needs to put me back on my, legs and make me walk away. And I realized that I was just really tired and I did not engage her in a thoughtful way. I
mm,
called again to apologize. I tried another email, I tried a phone call, and I didn't hear from her. And it was painful, but I just had to
yeah,
let it go because I'm not going to chase her. But at the end of the day, I also will tell people, chase me. Please chase me. Chase me a couple of times. And I feel like I have the wisdom at this point in my life to say, I don't know where we're going to go with this. You can chase me and I can give you an answer on your question, but if there's not a question, if you're in the neighborhood, I can go for a walk, but sometimes there's not doesn't always have to be an ongoing relationship. You want to leave it positive so
yeah.
you can open that door anytime and say, hey, in your closet, you haven't worn me in a while, I'm a pretty short shirt,
Well, and
those
clarity is
pants fit now.
such fun analogies there. Clarity is the great astringent, and as we evolve, our community just shifts, and it is hard sometimes. And when you're in the business where you're dealing with a lot of people all the time, you can have a meaningful connection in the moment with somebody, and it does leave your memory, right? When you come back around to that part. I love your tip on nice to see you versus nice to meet you, because I've made that same mistake from time to time. We all have. If we deal with a lot of people all the time, does not diminish that other person, but you gain some good data on that particular person. Not that you would want it to have happened that way, but she wasn't a person of grace, um, and so, we get to choose who we have in our circles and who we don't. I'm sure you wouldn't have chosen it to happen that way, but a little bit of grace would have gone a long way. um, so good stuff. Oh my goodness. Let's remember that. Nice to see you. So nice to meet
Nice to
you.
see you.
And network in your own closet. Really brilliant advice. Thank you for being with us,
My
Diane.
pleasure. My
I know
pleasure.
I know you could have been doing 100 other things and you invested in this audience. So thank you for that.
Happy to give. Happy to give.
All right. And for all of us collectively who are on the greatest journey of making the biggest impact that we can with the power of our voice, let's keep that packed moving forward. Post this episode forward. I know that you found value out of it, and that's your way to serve your community today. Let them have the benefit of pulling out some of these gemstones that Diane and I shared with you so that we can each continue to reach the most people possible with the power of our voice, right? And for now, we're going to say ciao, ciao.
Bye bye. Thank you.